So previously I said your brain consists from superior toward inferior, the right and the left cerebral hemisphere. If you go further down, you're going to see the diencephalon. If you go further down, you're going to see the brainstem, and toward the most posterior, you are going to see the cerebellum. We did talk about the right and the left cerebral hemisphere. The next, we're going to talk about the diencephalon. If you look at the following, what are the structure of your diencephalon? So basically, this is the diencephalon, the most superior part. So to understand better your diencephalon, it's connecting the brainstem with cerebellar hemisphere. So this is your cerebellar hemisphere. And it is connected to the brainstem through the diencephalon part. Your diencephalon consists of 3 parts. The largest one is the thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. The only part that we see imaging-wise is the hypothalamus. And of course, from the epithalamus, we will see only portion of it, which is the gland. What do I call that gland? Pineal gland. Do you guys remember the pineal gland? What pineal gland secrete?
Growth hormone.
Melatonin.
Melatonin. And what's the melatonin we need it for?
Sleep.
To regulate sleep-awake cycle, okay? Having yourself in the dark will allow this gland to secrete more hormone. The longer the time you stay in the light with the TV on or the light of your room on during the night, this gland will secrete less hormone. That's mean does not trigger your sleep, okay? Your hypothalamus consists only of what? Of nuclei, and this is why we do not see it. Basically, it's a matter of neuron cells, and those neuron cells, they have functions, correct? Do you guys remember any function of your hypothalamus? Come on. Any. This is
Temperature.
regulate temperature. What else? Mr. James.
Thirst, emotions,
Thirst, emotional,
sex drive,
and endocrine.
childbirth, blood pressure.
Endocrine. Let's make it simple to include everything. The endocrine, meaning there is no gland in your body will secrete any hormone until the hypothalamus told to do so. So all the endocrine hormone secretion function in the glands of your body are regulated by your hypothalamus, okay? As we said, the epithalamus, it is consists mainly by the pineal gland that regulate sleep-awake cycle. If you look at this picture, basically what they're pointing on is the diencephalon part. And of course, as we said, you will not be able to see the hypothalamus. You will see only the thalamus. The third ventricle, it is within the diencephalon part, and the roof of the diencephalon is made by your thalamus masses right and left respectively. Pineal gland is a part of your epithalamus. Since I said the hypothalamus is regulating the endocrine part, which gland of your body is the master of the endocrine? The master of the endocrine is the pituitary gland. So if you look, this is your pituitary gland. And your pituitary gland, it is connected directly to what? To the hypothalamus by this, we call it infundibulum or the stalk. So if you look over here, they put what? Infundibulum, also you can call it stalk. So the pituitary gland is directly connected to the hypothalamus by this stalk, meaning the stimulus for the hormones from the pituitary gland, it comes from your hypothalamus and reach the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland will send the stimulus to any endocrine gland in your body for a specific function. So if you go to this mid-sagittal cut, basically what you are seeing, the diencephalon, which is that one. This is the whole entire diencephalon. And of course, specifically, they are showing you the thalamus. As I said, the hypothalamus, you cannot recognize it anatomically. It's indistinguished anatomically. But we're going to pretend that this is the nuclei of your hypothalamus. And your hypothalamus, it's connected to what? To your pituitary gland by the stalk, which is, this is the stalk. And that will be your pituitary gland. Any question? Your diencephalon, it is always identified inferior to your cerebral hemisphere and superior to your brain stem. So if I ask you what does connect the cerebral hemisphere with brain stem, your answer will be the diencephalon. In axial cut, we'll be able to determine the presence of masses of the thalamus, which is, that's the right one, and this is the left one. And of course, in between the lateral masses of the thalamus, we said always you will see what? Your third ventricle. So thalamus masses can be used to identify the third ventricle, as I put it over here for you guys in green. If you go to a coronal cut, also in coronal cut, you will see a part of the pituitary gland. So that's your pituitary gland. And if you can tell, this is the stalk that will connect the pituitary gland to the hypothalamus. Mr. James, do you know what is this? The one I highlighted in yellow. Something located just underneath toward the inferior of your pituitary gland. Huh?
It's not your pons, is it?
If I said this is the pituitary gland, that's mean the blue supposed to be which bone, Mr. James? Which bone is the blue?
Can I help him?
Please.
Cool. Go ahead, please, sir.
Sella turcica.
Sella turcica. And if the blue is the sella turcica, this area is what?
Dorsum cellae.
Huh?
The dorsum cellae. Oh.
The black area is?
Sigmoid sinus.
The sphenoid sinus. Correct. The sphenoid sinus. Always use the anatomy word. Okay? You need to use the anatomy word. So basically, you are seeing the same concept. Either you can start from superior toward inferior or inferior toward superior. So if I'm starting from the bottom, I'm going to say, this is the sphenoid sinus. What do I see on the top of the sphenoid sinus? The sella turcica. What do I see on the top of the sella turcica? The pituitary gland. What do I see? The pituitary gland connected to hypothalamus by that extension, which is, we call it the infundibulum or the stalk. Again, an axial cut, a little bit oblique, and that's why you are seeing the eyes, correct? So I am seeing the pituitary gland, correct? If this is the pituitary gland, that's mean when you move toward the posterior, you will need to start to see the brainstem structure. So brainstem structure are located just toward the posterior. So if you move further toward the posterior, this is the brainstem part, which is the point. And of course, if you go further, those are the cerebellum. We're good?
Yep.
The chiasma optic, which is, we said, represent the crossing between the right and the left part of the optic nerve. So if this is your eye, then your optic nerve coming this way, and part of it will go to the opposite side. On the other part comes this way and will go to the opposite side too. So the crossing between the right and the left optic nerve, just anterior to the pituitary gland, represented by optic chiasm. Any question? One more time.
I have a question. The optic nerves, where do they end? Do they have a specific ending point?
Your occipital lobe,
They
where
run
is
all the way to the back?
the interpretation area. We'll talk about it next week, but
Okay.
this is the area which is not over here because they're showing the cerebellum, but the occipital lobe is the area where interpret the vision. Okay, we'll talk about it next week. This is my third ventricle. If this is the third ventricle, that's mean this is for sure my thalamus. Posterior to the thalamus, you're gonna see the pineal gland. Over here, that's the pineal gland in between them. Same, you could see it over here. That person is old enough, and you can tell because of three things. Number one, look at the choroidal plexus on the occipital lobe. How are they calcified? Number two, he has a calcification in his what? Pineal gland. And number three, so far you haven't seen any
fluid.
Exactly, you haven't seen any fluid or any wide third ventricle like that. The third ventricle is not that wide. Barely you see a point on yourself because you're too young. But this patient, he has it pretty much wide. As I said, most of the ventricle will start getting wider. And when the ventricles get wider, basically they're taking space from your brain structure, tissue. Okay? Any question? No? The last part that we're going to talk about for today is the limbic system. Okay? And the limbic system is the only part I will ask you function, and you need to make sure that you know the functions of the limbic system, please. Okay? I said I don't ask functions as much, but for this part, because I'm very much sure Dr. Jacobus, he did not cover it as a function. So I want you to know it, please. So what's the other name for limbic system? Also, they refer to it by the emotional brain. Why they refer to it by the emotional brain? Because this part or this structure, can you give me guys 1 second, please? Let me go get my plug. I'm running out of the battery. Just 1 second. Sorry for that. Okay, so limbic system, also known as the emotional brain. And basically the limbic system, there is no special structure. I call it limbic system or emotional brain. Basically, several different structure within your brain combined functional wise. They are going to be responsible for what? Number one, emotion expression. Number two, anger, aggression, fear, sorrow, sexual feeling, memory storage, and memory recoil. So one more time, limbic system, it is not structured by itself within your brain. No, it's several different structures that combined together, functional wise, they will give me all of the above function, like emotions, expression of any aggression, the sorrow, the memory, and etc. Okay? What are those structures? Number one, hippocampus. Number two, pharynx. Number three, amygdala. Number four, cingulate gyrus, olfactory tract, and mammillary body. We'll talk about each of those by itself. Let's start with the hippocampus and parahippocampal gyrus. If you look at this picture, this part of the brain structure, which is mainly located in your temporal lobe, or you can say between the parietal and the temporal, we refer to it by the hippocampus. Now, this is too hard to identify imaging wise. So your landmark to detect it will be that big gyri, which is, we call it para. Always word para stand for what? For next to, or toward the side, right and left respectively. So the parahippocampal gyri, it's pretty much wide area or more prominent, which can be used to detect the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is a part of your limbic system. In the parahippocampus area, basically, I can get also not only the hippocampus, but also I can get what? The amygdala. So the parahippocampus is a landmark used to detect those two structures, which is the hippocampus and the amygdala. If you look at this picture, everything you see in green basically represent the structure part of your emotional brain or the limbic system. But as I said, those are functionally connected to each other. So the stimulus, it's moving within the limbic system to provide you with a specific function. We're good? So this is an isolated picture for a patient with pathology. This is, we call it pathologic specimen, where they're showing you the hippocampus in this patient. And of course, as I said, can be identified at the level of the temporal lobe or temporal horn of the lateral ventricle, and represent of a mass of gray matter pumped area, okay? The hippocampus function is what? Memory, storage of our brain. And of course, will convert any short-term memory into a long-term memory. In our daily life, there are some stuff that I don't want to remember it forever, correct? But there are some also stuff that I need to keep it and remember it forever. So this is why your brain will what? Will move them from short-term memory into a long-term memory, okay? Also, they identified that your hippocampus play a part in your spatial relationship to be navigated of your body. The next structure is the amygdala. As you see, the amygdala in the picture is pointed by the blue area. And this is an almond chip structure, can be identified just next to the hippocampus, also located in the temporal lobe. They represent a mass of a gray matter. Function of this amygdala is emotion expression, aggression, anger, and fear. Olfactory tract. Word olfaction mean what? What's olfactory mean?
Smell.
Smell.
The smells. So in your nasal mucosa, you have receptors for the smells. These receptors are going to gather and enter your brain through the cribriform plate and foramina, the one we talked about them last time with the bone of the cranium. They get inside your cranium, carrying the sense of the smell. So you're understanding that the sense of the smell coming this way through your nose and is going to end in where? Inside of your cranium. That sense of the smell will be carried by the olfactory nerve. And that can tell that your olfactory nerve is connected to the rest of your limbic system. Where is the olfactory nerve and olfactory tract identified? This is your frontal lobe. So at the most inferior part of the frontal lobe. And you can tell it is connected to all other limbic system structure, including the amygdala. If you are wondering what my smells it has to do with my emotional brain, is that a good question?
Everything.
Okay, let me give you an example, Mr. Anthony. We are going to pretend a person, he has a cancer and he spent a couple weeks in the hospital receiving chemotherapy for his cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much information do you guys have about chemotherapy, but if you don't have, I'm telling you from now, it's one of the ugliest medication that you will ever take in your life. Why? Because you will vomit nonstop. They are really, really bad medication, but you need them? The answer is yes. Anyway, this patient he received for a couple weeks and he been discharged and everything is fine. This patient will never dare drive his car next to the hospital. Every time he does, he will trigger the emotional brain to remember all the events when he used to take those medication. Now, if he walked to any hospital visiting someone, if he smells the chemotherapy, what's going to happen to him? He's going to run to where? To the bathroom. Why? Because he is going to trigger what? The vomit reflex. So if you can look everything, it's about memory through the amygdala and fear through the hippocampal and the aggression and everything, including what? Including your olfactory tract. Did you guys get the point? Go ahead.
Yes,
Sir.
Doctor, can I say something?
One at a time. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a couple cool tricks. If you're studying, if you wear a new cologne, and then when you go to take the test, you wear it again. Another trick is if you're taking vacations, buy a new cologne, and then in the future, when you go to spray that cologne, it'll take you right back to that vacation.
That's completely true. That's true. This is why if you see some ladies or possibly guys, if by accident you have been separated from your husband or your boyfriend, and by accident you meet another guy, if that guy he used the same cologne, that lady, she will never call you. Believe me. Anything will remind her of him. I don't want to talk to that guy. I don't think he's gonna be good for me. Did you guys get the point? So your limbic system, basically, as I said, it's a matter of a couple structure that are interconnected to provide me with a specific function. You guys got the point? Now,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of similar to having a hangover, and you know, smelling that liquor you were drinking the night before.
yeah,
You go back to it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, works too. Yeah, works too. All right. Next structure, which is basically are the pharynx. Those are bundle of fiber that move with the same curve as the corpus callosum, by the way. And of course, they are just located underneath of it. So if you look at this picture, the corpus callosum connecting the right and the left, that's the corpus callosum. If you move toward and down, basically this is the pharynx. And you can tell that there are some fibers that run between the right and the left part of the cerebral hemisphere, which is they start from the hippocamp and go underneath of the corpus callosum to meet with the other part from the hippocamp. So this is one hippocamp on one side, this is the other hippocamp, and those fibers of the pharynx are connecting the right and the left part. Another one, which is, we call it cingulate gyri. The cingulate gyri, basically, it is located superior to your corpus callosum, which is basically this pumped area of the brain. Also, the fiber are moving with the same direction and curving like the corpus callosum, and of course will connect to the other part with the hippocampal area in the same side of the hemisphere. Mammillary body also are located on the anterior part of the pharynx, which is, we are talking about this part. And of course, you have them on the right and on the left, and they can be identified at the floor of the third ventricle. Those are mainly composed of the white matter fibers, and they are used to for some function with the recognition. And it has been postulated that people that they have a problem with their memory, that's mean those memory body are affected. And it has been said that people that heavy drinker do damage this part, and this is why people that they are alcoholic, usually their memory it is lower than the normal person, and they said because of the memory body are damaged by the alcohol. Of course, some of those parts are hard to be seen in the anatomy cross section, but we try to point as much as possible. So let's go and look for mammary body, which is basically only this part. You guys get the... Now, the hippocampal area, it is seen as one of those gyri pumped area, which is this one. Of course, you're gonna point on them right and left respectively, which is that one on the opposite side. So the parahippocampal will be in this part close to the hippocampus as landmark for it, which is in this CT scan image, you'll be able to tell this is the amygdala, and that will be the hippocampus. On the other picture, which is they are showing you how you be able to point on the olfactory tract. And as I said earlier, you need to look on the most inferior portion of your frontal lobe. So look at the cut, how they make it very specific to the frontal lobe of the brain. And it is coronal. That means the top is superior and the bottom is what? Inferior. So looking for inferior. So looking at the olfactory tract, always supposed to be where? On the bottom. So this is the right and this is the left one, respectively. The cingulate gyri, we said you will need to identify it on the top of the corpus callosum. So if those are the ventricles, then this is my corpus callosum. And if I said this is my corpus callosum, that's mean to identify the cingulate gyri, it's gonna be this part. Make sense? So where do we identify the hippocampus? Always the hippocampus, you have to look at it in the temporal lobe. So that's my temporal lobe. That's my other temporal lobe. And my hippocampus is the pumped area on each side of the temporal lobe, which can be used as landmark. Any question? This is all what you guys need to know for today's lecture. On the next week, we will continue with the brainstem and the cerebellum and the blood supply and the blood drainage of your brain. If you have any question, please ask. If you don't, then you don't have to ask or don't ask. Do not forget your assignment on the Moodle for next week. Okay, it is due on Friday midnight. Please do not do the assignment until you read to benefit out of it.
Dr. Baha, I have a personal question for you. Did you ever work at a Mark Taper Imaging Center?
If I look where?
Did you ever work at Cedars-Sinai Mark Taper Imaging Center?
I've never worked anywhere.
Oh, okay. All right, never mind.
I never worked anywhere.
All right.
Dr.
I have a student from the ultrasound. I told you guys that I do teach ultrasound for the Casa Loma 2 during the week. So I have a student, they're working there on the ultrasound department. His name is Mauricio Patris. You can look for him, he's a cool guy.
I need to get in contact with him. Hopefully I can try to do my externship there, clinicals there. So I thought you had some sort of connect.
You need to do, well, the issue with the clinical externship, if you need a specific place, you need to tell Mrs. Simon. And okay. Mrs. Simon, she will try to contact that place to determine if we can go over there. Now, mostly, some places, they don't take student. Or they've already have connection with other colleges. So it is unfortunately, we can do it. But if any of you find a specific place that you wanna go, just let her know. They will go, they make a visit, and they take a contract for them to sign, and they need to make sure that everything is perfect so you can learn, all right? You guys need to be careful because there's tons of scam for those parts, tons.
Wow.
There's a people, they open a business just to tell the school, bring your student, we teach them. Clinical side. Apparently, they are scam. They don't even have one single patient. Not even a patient. There is no patient. Just a scam, believe me. So you guys need to be aware of. For you guys, the site that we use are pretty much very good. And you can tell when you go, you're going to see your friend that they graduated from Casa Loma. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. They're still, until this moment, they're hiring. So hopefully you guys will get the chance to get hired by the site where are you going to continue or finish your clinical externship. Any question, ladies and gentlemen?
Nope, that was great. Thank you, doctor.
All right, then enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Bye. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, doctor.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.